It's currently 5:30 in the morning. This has been the earliest I've woken up in probably at least half a year.
It really was an early morning start. We landed in Tasmania at around 7:30 AM, picked up our rental car and drove to Hobart, where we had made our first and only hotel booking. Okay, so I've been in Tasmania for about a day now, and I can say that it's really beautiful down here, but it's also incredibly cold. It's like only 18 degrees during the day, like when the sun is up. See if it'll focus. 17 degrees. It's bloody cold. Day 2 starts now. On the floor of the bathrooms, each cubicle, there's like a projection screen. Look at that. There was one exhibition there called On the Origin of Art, which was really interesting and explained different theories about why humans like art, and then showed different paintings and art exhibitions that sort of evidence the different theories on why humans might like art. It was super interesting, and I probably spent about 3 hours alone in that exhibition. Mona really was a spectacle. Even if you're not into some of the more questionable modern art on display there, it's still worth going just for the architecture and surrounds of the site itself. Today is day 3 of our Tasmania trip, and the plan for today is either to go sailing in the afternoon after going to Salamanca markets, or to drive up Mount Wellington and take in the scenery of Greater Hobart. So my parents are currently checking out the Salamanca market. Probably not going to go sailing, but we're definitely going to drive up Mount Wellington. There she is, mate, right up there. Later that day we headed up Mount Wellington. It was literally like sitting in a light aircraft just below the clouds. That's how tall it was. We honestly don't have any mountains quite nearly that tall anywhere near Brisbane. Okay, so today's day 5 of our Tasmania trip. Yesterday we went to Port Arthur historical site down at the very bottom of Tasmania, where the former penal colony was set, and also the location of the 1996 Port Arthur massacre. Later that day we then drove up to Swansea, which is where we are now. Swansea is really small. There's probably only a few hundred, maybe 1,000 people who live here. In keeping with what we have experienced with the rest of Tasmania, Swansea is also a really beautiful place.
On imaginary problems. You gotta focus on what's real, man.
Plan for today is to go to Wineglass Bay, which is just across the beach here, and then head up to Launceston. The beach sand, it felt less like sand and more like pearls underneath your feet. The water like the purified drinking sort, which you could have sworn had literally just melted off an Antarctic glacier. That was cold.
When I saw Fresnel Bay this morning, I thought it was pretty beautiful. I didn't think Wineglass Bay would be that much more beautiful than Fresnel Bay, but it really was. It's almost like Tasmania's own little version of Whitehaven Beach.
Lorne, as the locals call it, felt much less like the state's second largest metropolis, and much more like a picturesque small city with a rich history to celebrate.
Currently walking up and around Cataract Gorge in Launceston, Tasmania. It's either day 5 or 6 now in Tasmania. We're currently in a town in the middle of Tasmania called Sheffield, and we're about an hour's drive away from Cradle Mountain, so that's our next stop.
The day we picked to go to Cradle Mountain was wet and miserable, but strangely, that added to the charm of the place. Although I haven't been there, it's what I imagined Loch Ness in Scotland to be like, with all the low flora and sparse highland fauna.
It's like bloody Loch Ness.
We got really soaked. I in particular was drenched. Soaked straight through to the bone, but I was happy, especially when I got a glimpse of the cradle. It was wonderful, unlike any experience I'd had so far in mainland Australia. On our final night, we stayed in a self-sufficient little manor on the outskirts of the historic village of Richmond, right outside of Hobart. For his afternoon tea, Dad literally picked an apple off a tree in a local park. It was quaint and a fitting way to end our trip. I know I've said it before, but Tasmania's beauty really did become the theme of our trip, an untouched natural beauty second to none I had seen before. The contrast of the colours in the landscapes, the historic architecture, the colder climate, even in the summer months, and the decadent finesse cuisine, all made Tasmania feel like a slice of true refined Australian culture, so clearly influenced by its rich colonial history. When it came time to leave, I truly was sad for a moment until I remembered how glad I was that I had just discovered this place so close to home. If you're at all interested in beautiful, untouched natural surrounds, do yourself a favour and check out our island state.